This is Dhanlakshmi, working as an assistant professor in the Department of Corporate Secretaryship with the CA and Professional Accounting at Konga Arts and Science College. Today we are going to see the two important topics of the Indian Contract Act. First one is meaning of contract. Second one is essential elements of a valid contract. The Indian Contract Act 1872, it was enacted on 25th April 1872. It lays down all the provisions relating to contracts and governs all the disputes related contracts in India. This act is based on the principles of English common law. It is applicable throughout India. In business law, contract is very important topic. So I'm going to discuss a lot of concepts. Then only you must have a clear idea about the contract. The Contract Act 1872 defines as an agreement enforceable by law is a contract. Thus, for a valid contract, there has to be an agreement which is enforceable by law. Further, for enforceability, an agreement must possess the essential elements of a valid contract as contained in the Contract Act 1872. Simply say, the contract is equal to agreement plus enforceability. Here, the first concept is agreement. Agreement is a promise or set of promises forming consideration for each other. An agreement may be in the form of oral or written between two or more parties, which defines rights, duties, and obligation of the parties. So simply, offer plus acceptance is equal to agreement. When this agreement becomes legally enforceable, it is called a contract. Simply said, if we want to enter into an agreement, we need two parties. Then after creating an agreement, it must be enforceable at law. That means that agreement must have all the essential elements of a valid contract. Now I am going to tell about various essential elements of a valid contract. Section 10 of the Indian Contract Act 1872 lays down condition which makes a contract valid. First one is offer, second one is acceptance, third one is consideration, fourth one is capacity of the parties to enter into a contract, fifth one is pre-consent, sixth one is lawful object, seventh one is intention to create legal relationship, eighth one is agreement not declared void, ninth one is possibility of performance, 10th one is legal formalities. First one is offer. The word offer and proposal are often used interchangeably. Offer is the first step in the formation of a contract or agreement. The person who makes an offer is called offerer or promiser, and the person to whom the offer has been made is called offeree or promisee. Offer must be definite, clear, complete, and final. A proposal, when accepted, it becomes a promise or agreement. Offerer must communicate his willingness to enter into a contract. Mere desire or willingness to enter into contract is not enough. Offer and acceptance must be consensus ad item, which means both the party must agree on the same thing and in the same manner. For example, Mr. A owns several cars. He entered into an agreement with Mr. B to sell one of his cars. He tells Mr. B, will you buy my car at rupees 2 lakhs? This is not a valid offer as Mr. A did not specify the car he is talking about. Here, the offer is ambiguous, that is not clear. Simply, the agreement means one person making the offer and the other person accepting that offer. Then agreement is created. That means offer plus acceptance is equal to agreement. Here, the person making an offer is called offerer or proposer. Here an offer must be made with the intention of getting favorable response from the acceptor. Here the response may be in the form of positive or negative. If the positive response is received means offer is accepted. Otherwise the offer is rejected. If the offer is accepted means next step is creation of agreement. Then second one is acceptance. According to section 2 subsection B of the Indian Contract Act 1872, when a person to whom a proposal has been made signifies his assent thereto. Following are the some conditions of a valid acceptance. First one is acceptance must be absolute and unqualified. Acceptance must be absolute. There should not be any conditions attached to acceptance. For example, A offer to sell his laptop to B at rupees 35,000. B replies that he will buy it for rupees 30,000. This is not a valid acceptance. Here, there is a condition attached to the acceptance. Then the second condition is acceptance must be communicated. The acceptance must be communicated to the offerer. A mental acceptance to an offer is not a valid acceptance. Acceptance must be come to the knowledge of the offerer. For example, A tells B to communicate his acceptance to him by a WhatsApp message, but B sent his acceptance by post. This will be an invalid acceptance unless B informs A that the acceptance is not according to the manner prescribed. Then the third condition is acceptance must be communicated within a reasonable time period. If no time period is prescribed, then it must be given within a reasonable time. Simply say, in the formation of a contract, the acceptance is very important one. So once the offer is made by the offerer means the next step is receiving acceptance from the acceptor. The person to whom the offer is made is called acceptor. Once the offer is accepted, then that must be communicated to the offerer. Here the most important intention of acceptance is performance of an offer. Next, I am going to tell another simple example for offer and acceptance. Mr. Arun offers to buy Mr. Raja's car for rupees 5 lakhs and Mr. Raja accepts such an offer. Simply an offer does not create any legal obligations, but after the offer is accepted, it becomes a promise. Here the very important concept is the acceptor have to give acceptance without any condition. If there is any condition in the acceptance, that contract becomes invalid. And the next important one is there should not be any third party accepting it. The acceptance given by a third party, it will not become a contract. That means the acceptance must be accepted by the offeree and not by the third person. Then the third important requirement is consideration. Simply say the consideration is very important one because the contract without consideration is void. If there is no consideration, that will not become a contract. So first we want to know what is meant by consideration. Consideration is described as something in written. It is also very important for the validity of a contract. A promise to do something or to provide something without anything in return will not be enforceable at law and therefore will not be valid. Consideration need not be in kind or cash. A contract without consideration is a wagering or bidding. Besides, the consideration must also be lawful. Simply said, consideration means value given for the performance of a promise. That means mutual performance of a promises. It flows from both the parties. The concept of consideration requires that both the parties to a contract shall have given and have received something as the price of their respective promise. For example, Mr. Arun promised to install a home air conditioning unit for Mr. Raja, and Mr. Raja promises to pay rupees 5,000 to Mr. Arun for the job. Here, receiving 5,000 is the consideration for Mr. Arun, and receiving air conditioned service is the consideration for Mr. Raja. Both are give something and get something. Next, fourth important essential elements of a valid contract is capacity of the parties to the contract. The parties to the contract must be competent. An agreement with a person who is a minor will be void ab initio. Section 11 of the Indian Contract Act lays the following condition to specify competency of the parties to the contract. Parties to the contract must have attained the age of majority, that is 18 years in normal cases and 21 years if guardian is appointed by the court. Parties must be of sound mind while making a contract. A person who is usually of unsound mind but occasionally of a sound mind can make a contract when he is of sound mind. However, if a person is usually of a sound mind but occasionally of unsound mind, cannot make a contract when he is of unsound mind. Parties must not be disqualified from contracting by any law to which he is subject. For example, A enters into an agreement with B, who is a minor, to sell a bike. This is not a valid contract because a minor enter into a contract will be void ab initio. Simply said, the Indian Contract Act declares certain classes of person as incompetent to enter into a contract. Here, the first we want to know who are the incompetent person to enter into a contract. Section 11 of the Act says that the following persons are competent person to enter into a contract. They are he or she has the age of majority. Second one is he or she has a sound mind. Third one is he or she not disqualified by law from contract. Next, fifth one is free consent. The parties must enter into an agreement with free consent. The parties should enter into an agreement with his own wish and will, and not by coercion, undue influence, fraud, mistake, or misrepresentation. Consent will be deemed to be free only if it does not constitute the following elements. Simply said, as per the Contract Act, two or more parties are said to consent when they agree upon the same thing in the same sense. The consent of the party is said to be free when any of the following do not induce it, namely coercion, misrepresentation, fraud, undue influence, and mistake. If it is presented in the intention of the parties, that must be legally invalid. Next, I am going to say something about coercion, misrepresentation, fraud, undue influence, and mistake. First one is coercion. Coercion is defined under Section 13 of the Indian Contract Act 1872 as coercion is the committing or threatening to commit any act forbidden by the Indian Penal Code or the unlawful detaining or threatening to detain any property to the prejudice of any person whatever with the intention of causing any person to enter into an agreement. For example, X threatens Z to kill him if he does not transfer all his money to him. Z transfer all his money to X to save his own life. This agreement is not valid as the money was transferred by coercion. Then the second one is undue influence. According to Section 16 of the Indian Contract Act 1872, a contract is said to be induced by undue influence, where the relations subsisting between the parties are such that one of the parties is in a position to dominate the will of the other and the uses that position to obtain an unfair advantage over the other. For example, A sell his land to B, who is employer at a very low price in order to get promotion. Here, A's consent was not free and he was under undue influence of his employer. So, this is void agreement. Third one is fraud. Section 17 of the Indian Contract Act states that fraud means and includes any of the following acts committed by a party to a contract to induce another party to enter into the contract. The suggestion as a fact of that which is not true, then the active concealment of a fact by one having knowledge or belief of the fact. Then a promise made without any intention of performing it. Then any other act fitted to deceive. Then any such act or omission as the law specifically declares to be fraudulent. For example, A sells his watch to B, claiming that the watch is original and antique. Later on, B finds out that the watch is not original and antique. So that agreement is void agreement. Then fourth one is misrepresentation. Misrepresentation, contract law, is the communication of inaccurate information that induces a recipient to enter into a contract. For example, A enters into a contract with B to sell his horse. B wants a horse that is ideal for racing as he wants to participate in a horse racing competition. A sells a sick horse to B by misrepresenting it to be an ideal horse for racing. Later on, he finds out that the horse is sick and not capable of running in competition. This amount to misrepresentation and this contract is void. Then last one is mistake. According to section 20 of the Indian Contract Act 1872, mistake is where both the parties to an agreement are under a mistake as a matter of fact that is essential to the agreement. Mistake can be both unilateral and bilateral. That means unilateral means one party is under mistakes as a matter of fact. Then bilateral means both the parties to agreement are under mistakes as a matter of fact. For example, X enters into an agreement with Y to sell German Shepherd. At the time of agreement, the dog was already dead. Both X and Y was not aware of it. This contract is void due to mistake of fact. Then sixth one is intention to create legal relationship. The intention of the parties must be to create a legal relationship between them. Agreement of social or domestic nature are not enforceable by law. The parties to the agreement must make it clear while entering into an agreement that they want to create a legal relationship. If any party to the contract fails to comply with the terms of the agreement, then it will amount to breach of contract and will give rise to legal consequences. For example, a father promises his son to buy him a bicycle if he scores 90% in his exam. Later on, father refuses to buy his son a bicycle even after scoring 90%. This will not amount to any breach of contract as there was not intention to create a legal relationship between a father and his son. It is one of the most fundamental aspects of the law. First, we want to know the various kinds of relationship. Basically, there are three types. First one is domestic relationship. Second one is social relationship. And the third one is legal relationship. The domestic relationship means the relationship among the family members and friends. Then the second one is social relationship. That is the creation of relationship through social services. Here parties are enter into some activities with the motive of service and not for profit. Then the last one is legal relationship. It consists of readiness of a party to accept the legal consequences of having entered into an agreement. Then the seventh one is lawful object. According to Contract Act an agreement may become a valid contract only if it is for lawful object. The below mentioned objects are not lawful as per the Contract Act. First one is if it is forbidden by law. Second one is if it is against the provisions of any other laws. Third one is if it is fraudulent. Fourth one is if it damages somebody's person or property. Then fifth one is if it is in the opinion of courts immoral or against the public policies. Simply, if an agreement is illegal, immoral or against public policy, such agreement becomes an invalid contract. So object must be lawful. It must not be illegal, immoral, forbidden by any law or opposed to public policy. Any agreement which has unlawful object, it will be void. That means the intention of the object of the contract must be lawful. If a contract defeats the purpose of law, it shall be deemed to defeat the provisions of law. If the object of the contract is commit fraud, that contract is void. Then the eighth one is agreement not expressly declared void. This Act specifies certain types of agreement that have been expressly declared to be void. The following agreements have been declared as void under the Contract Act. First one is an agreement in restraint of marriage. Second one is an agreement in restraint of trade. Third one is an agreement by way of wager. Then fourth one is an agreement in restraint of legal proceedings. And fifth one is an agreement whose meaning is uncertain. Then the ninth one is possibility of performance. Agreement must be capable of performance. If agreement is not capable of performance, it is void. In order to make an agreement valid, the terms of agreement must be clear, certain, and capable of performance. An agreement to do an impossible act is void. For example, A enters into an agreement with B to bring back C to life who is already dead. This agreement is void because this act is impossible. Then the 10th one is legal formalities. According to Indian Contract Act 1872, a contract can be both in oral or in writing. Contract involving movable property can be made orally, but contract involving immovable property must always be in writing. However, it is advisable that the contract must always be in writing because it will be easier to prove in the court if any dispute arising between the parties in future. Contract must be signed and attested by witness and registered if required by the law. For example, X enters into an oral agreement with Y to sell his bike. This is a valid agreement. However, it is advisable that the contract must always be in writing because of evidence for proof in the court of law. Contract must be signed and attested by witness, and registration is required under the Contract Act. Simply said, an agreement enforceable by law is a contract. Thank you.